Now, Ron Paul does these legislative updates every week. And I know some of the local radio stations, play these over some of the bottom of the hour, top of the hour news that plays on some of the shows. And I can't say I disagree with them. Boy, the news is just amazing. Talk about propaganda. And so I got a chance to hear it. But for years, in fact, Genesis years ago would play this over the first 5 minutes before Derry Brownfield started. We should institute that, in my humble opinion. Not that what I say does anything up at the network, but too busy to even try to be involved. But here is Ron Paul talking about this worship of the state, this worship of government. Here it is.
Hello, this is Ron Paul with the weekly update for Monday, February 5th. With the elections over and the 110th Congress settling in, the media have been reporting ad nauseum about who has assumed new political powers in Washington. We're subjected to breathless reports about how so-and-so is now the powerful chair of an important committee, how certain candidates are amassing power for the 2000 election, and so on. Nobody questions the use of the word power or considers its connotations. It's simply assumed in Washington and the mainstream media that political power is proper and inevitable. The problem is that politicians are not supposed to have power over us. We're supposed to be free. We seem to have forgotten that freedom means the absence of government coercion. So when politicians and the media celebrate political power, they really are celebrating the power of certain individuals to use coercive state force. Remember that one's relationship with the state is never voluntary. Every government edict, policy, regulation, court decision, and law ultimately is backed up by force in the form of police, guns, and jail. That is why political power must be fiercely constrained by the American people. The desire for power over other human beings is not something to celebrate, but something to condemn. The 20th century's worst tyrants were political figures, men who fanatically sought power over others through the apparatus of the state. They wielded that power absolutely without regard for the rule of law. Our constitutional system, by contrast, was designed to restrain political power and place limits on the size and scope of government. It is this system, the rule of law, which we should celebrate, not political victories. Political power is not like the power possessed by those who otherwise obtain fame and fortune. After all, even the wealthiest individual cannot force anyone to buy a particular good or service. Even the most famous celebrities cannot force anyone to pay attention to them. It is only when elites become politically connected that they begin to impose their views on all of us. In a free society, government is restrained and therefore political power is less important. I believe the proper role for government in America is to provide national defense, a court system for civil disputes, a criminal justice system for acts of force and fraud, and little else. In other words, the state as referee rather than an active participant in our society. Those who hold political power, however, would lose their status in a society with truly limited government. It simply would not matter much who occupied various political posts, since their ability to tax, spend, and regulate would be severely limited. This is why champions of political power promote an activist government that involves itself in every area of our lives from cradle to grave. They gain popular support by promising voters that government will take care of everyone, while the media shower them with praise for their bold vision. Political power is inherently dangerous in a free society. It threatens the rule of law and thus threatens our fundamental freedoms. Those who understand this should object whenever political power is glorified. Thanks for calling this update at 888-322-1414. The text of this and previous messages can be found at www.house.gov/Paul. Thanks for calling.
All right, there is the congressman. He's scheduled to call in the next 5 minutes. I wanted to spend some time now. We'll get to your calls later if we have time when the congressman leaves us. I wanted to go over the speech he gave today. This is the Honorable Ron Paul of Texas before the U.S. House of Representatives. Statement for hearing before the House Financial Services Committee, Monetary Policy and State of the Economy. Transparency in monetary policy is a goal we should all adopt. I've often wondered why Congress so willingly has given up its prerogative over monetary policy. Astonishingly, Congress, in essence, has ceded total control over the value of our money to a secretive central bank. At the end of this, we probably won't have time to read it all. He calls for abolishing the Federal Reserve yet again and introduces the legislation. Congress created the Federal Reserve, yet it had no constitutional authority to do so. We forgot that those powers not explicitly granted to Congress by the Constitution are inherently denied to Congress, and thus the authority to establish a central bank never was given. And it's a private banking cartel is what it is. Of course, Jefferson and Hamilton had the debate early on, and the debate seemingly settled in 1913. And the British banks and French banks predominantly publicly lobbied for over 100 years to finally get that. And on his deathbed, I would add, Thomas Jefferson, they said, well, what are you most proud of in your life? Not Thomas Jefferson, Old Hickory, Andrew Jackson, said, I killed the bank. He stopped it in the 1830s. Continuing, but transparency and oversight are something else, and they're worth considering. Congress, although not by law, essentially has given up all its oversight responsibility over the Federal Reserve. There are no true audits, and Congress knows nothing of the conversions, conversations, plans, and actions taken in concert with other central banks of the world. We get less and less information regarding the money supply each year, especially now that the M3 is no longer reported as of the start of last year when the new Fed chairman, Edward Bernanke, came in. I added, the role the Fed plays in the President's secretive working group on financial markets goes unnoticed by members of Congress. The Federal Reserve shows no willingness to inform Congress voluntarily about how often the working group meets, what actions it takes that affect the financial markets, or why it takes those actions. But these actions, directed by the Federal Reserve, alter the purchasing power of our money. They've devalued it by almost half. I added, but these actions, directed by the Federal Reserve, alter the purchasing power of our money. Let that sink in. And that purchasing power is always reduced. The dollar today is worth only 4 cents compared to the dollar in 1913. That's about a 2-year-old conservative number. It's about 1.5. Again, the dollar, but what does it matter, 4 cents or a cent and a half? The dollar today is worth only 4 cents compared to the dollar in 1913 when the Federal Reserve started. This has profound consequences for our economy and our political stability. All paper currencies are vulnerable to collapse, and history is replete with examples of great suffering caused by such collapses, especially to a nation's poor and middle class. This leads to political turmoil. And continuing with Congressman's speech, you can just simply go to Liberty Committee's website that we have a link to up on Infowars.com and read it for yourself. The speech has several pages left to it. That's the speech that he gave today. We now have the congressman on the line, but we've got a break here in about 45 seconds. I'll just bring him up now and say, congratulations, Congressman, that you're going to be running for president.
Well, we've formed this exploratory committee, and that's the first step in that direction.
And how long until we get a up and running big website and campaign gear? Because I know people are very excited. I've never seen such excitement.
I think everything is in place. There were a few of the banking details to be worked out, which should be within hours, not days, that it should be all in place.
All right, we've got a quick break, sir, and we'll be right back on the other side. I want to talk about your run for the presidency. I want to talk about reintroducing the bill to abolish the Federal Reserve and a host of other issues, the conflict with Iran. It's all coming up on the other side.